Hey everybody, it's Jason from the Texas Gun Vault, and Happy New Year. It's the first Sunday of 2022, and you know what that means? It's time for the Texas Gun Vault poll question of the week. And yes, I'm filming in my safe room today. It is simply too cold outside for me to work in the garage. It is in the low 20s around here, and it's just too chilly. So I brought all my camera equipment inside, so I hope you like the new backdrop. But for today's question, of course, we're going to be asking you about your predictions for 2022 in regards, do you think this is going to be a pro, anti, or neutral Second Amendment year? I know everyone likes to give their predictions at the start of the new year, but no one really goes at the end and goes, did any of those predictions come true? We always like to be looking forward. But I'm curious to see what you guys have to think. It's a new year. Hopefully things are going to be turning around. So let's dive right into this week's poll question. The new year is upon us. Each changing of the calendar, we like to make predictions for the future, but sometimes these are more hopes than anything else. Here at the Texas Gun Vault, we make Second Amendment advocacy a top priority, and we focus on firearms-related news, content, and commentary. With that stated, what are your predictions for the year 2022 in regards to gun rights? With the upcoming Second Amendment case ruling in the Supreme Court, to the midterm elections on everyone's minds, will we advance gun rights on the federal and state levels, lose more rights, or remain about even with some wins and losses? Remember, these are predictions and not your hopes. And I wanted to make sure I added that little bit of a caveat there, simply because I know we always go into a new season, a new time in our life, and we like to maybe be positive and say, this is what's going to happen. But in our hearts we know, well, the odds of everything happening is kind of slim. It's like when a new president gets elected. And let's say if a Republican gets elected in 2 years, everyone's gonna be like, well, that's gonna be the end to this and the end of the NFA and blah, 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 blah. And then nothing actually happens. Yeah, we always have hopes because they're gonna say something or want to do something, but the actual implementation of that is a whole nother ball of wax. And sometimes when it comes to the new year, we like to say, well, this is going to be the year it all changes. And it's easy to get a lot of clickbaity videos and so forth with predictions, but we all know they're just hopes. We have to take a step back, take the emotions out of it, and ask ourselves, what do we really think is going to happen based off of history and probability? Well, let's see what you guys have to say with this week's results. With over 1,200 votes this week, we have 2022 will be a pro-gun year with a positive SCOTUS ruling and more, 36%. 2022 will be an anti-gun year with more gun control passed, 17%. 2022 will be neutral in regards to firearms with wins and losses, 46%. And something else, explain in the comments, 2%. Now I have to say, based off of probabilities, I actually think this is the exact way the poll was going to turn out. Simply, from my personal taste, I look at every year as going to be a neutral year. You know, I've heard many conspiracy theorists in the gun control movement say that they need this constant battle for everybody to make money. So for example, the NRA and other pro-gun groups need all this anti-gun legislation to be pushed through so that they can make money and remain relevant. But then on the other side, well, if guns were actually completely eliminated, well, what's going to happen to all the millions upon millions of dollars that are funneled into all of these anti-gun groups from these big donors? Well, a lot of people are going to be out of work. So it's almost like the two sides kind of work together to make sure there's always this push and pull and this ebb and flow and this strife between the two, but in actuality they're kind of working together for mutual benefit. You know, it's kind of the yin and yang. And to be honest with you, that's kind of the way that I look at it. We have red states and blue states. Whatever a blue state does, a red state has to react, and vice versa. You know, also, on the federal level, you have a very divided government. I know at the time of filming this, yeah, the Democrats control both houses of Congress, but by a slim majority. And just because they have a slim majority, it means they only need one defector, one person to disagree with them, and they can't get anything through. So a lot of people are going out there on the Armageddon bus going, it is the end of gun rights. And then nothing actually happens. And then everybody votes for the other party, like what happened in 2016. We had both houses and the presidency. It was going to be the end of the NFA. The Hearing Protection Act was here. And nothing gets done. It just kind of stays the same all the time. And I think kind of based off of history and kind of tradition, that's the way I think the future is going to be. It's just the ebb and flow. And very rarely do we see instances where you have a big push or big win on one side or the other. But let's break each one of these down, and I'll give you guys my thoughts on them. First, we have 2022 will be a pro-gun year with a positive SCOTUS ruling and more. I know that a lot of people are really hoping right now that this is going to be a very broad ruling in this New York concealed carry case. Of course, we're all hoping that Justice Thomas is going to write the majority opinion, because if he does, it is going to be a broad ruling telling all the lower courts that when it comes to Second Amendment cases, the time is over to treat the Second Amendment like a second-class right. It is a first-class right, and it must be upheld to strict scrutiny. Now, what are the odds of him writing this opinion? Well, it really depends on what the Chief Justice does. I think if the Chief Justice, who's kind of the wishy-washy justice on the court, if he votes in the majority, he gets to decide who writes the opinion. He might write the opinion himself, and he might hand it off to somebody else that he knows is a little bit more temperate or a little bit more squishy like him on the Second Amendment, and keep it to be a little bit more narrow of a ruling. I definitely think it's going to be a positive ruling for the Second Amendment, but it just depends on how broad it's going to be. And a lot of people are hoping this is going to be a landmark year. Then we have 2022 will be an anti-gun year with more gun control passed. The only real way I can see that this is what's going to happen is if there is another one of those mass tragedy events. You guys know the type of events that I'm talking about that make tons of media waves. Now, of course, the anti-gunners, I'm not trying to accuse them of wanting death, but you know that every time something like that happens, they're licking their chops because they're going to make a lot of money. They're going to push their agenda. And that's when the squishes on both sides come out and say, okay, we need to make a compromise. Even though a compromise is supposed to be where one side gives up something, the other side gives up something, no one gets what they want, but both kind of advance what they want. It's a compromise, right? But according to many of the anti-gunners, pro-gunners need to compromise, which is us give up everything, and they give up nothing in return, and we're all supposed to be happy. But that's when you're going to have those politicians that are kind of the fit sitters and want to be on CNN and all the mainstream media. They're going to be like, okay, let's pass something. That's the only way this is going to happen. But this is also an election year, and they know that if they pass some type of emotional gun control legislation, even after a major event, well, they're probably going to kiss their political careers goodbye. Because while the American public does have a short memory, the closer you get to that election, you can't do more and more radical things, because all of that can be brought up on the campaign trail, and you can lose. So I definitely don't think this is the way it's going to go, but 17% of people think that's the case. Then we have 2022 will be neutral in regards to firearms with wins and losses. And as I kind of talked here in the beginning, this is definitely the way I think it's going to go. I think you're going to see some pro-gun control move on the state level. I think you might see some suppressor action where some states that may have them banned now get more passed. You might see some more constitutional carry here and there. On the federal level, I don't really see anything happening in the judiciary. It all really depends on what's going to happen with that Supreme Court case. But then, of course, if the Supreme Court case comes back and it's a very broad ruling, expect many of the blue states and the usual suspects to come out and go, well, we're going to defy it as much as we possibly can. We're going to pass as much and get around this ruling, and we're going to fight it. And you're probably going to see some losses there because you still have circuits like the Ninth Circuit that is very anti-gun, that will uphold these, and all these cases will have to be adjudicated again all the way back to the Supreme Court. It's just going to be this constant ebb and flow. And I think you're only going to see the divide between the red and the blue states widen. And I think in the long term, that's the most detrimental thing because it's dividing the nation. Just because a red state does something, a blue state has to defy them, and vice versa. And this divide is getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and it's like having two national identities all trying to live in the same place. And we know that does not breed homogeneity, that it's not going to keep the country together. And then finally, we have something else explained in the comments. Now, I went through all the comments, and the people that I think might have voted this way were saying, well, you might get a little bit more pro-gun than anti-gun. It's not going to be even. It's not going to be neutral. But there's going to be wins and losses. I really didn't see anybody have any other predictions, except there was one person that also mentioned that gun control, kind of like I mentioned, is just going to be used for political posturing and election results, even though nothing is really going to happen. So that's my thoughts on this and my predictions for the year. But now let's dive right into your comments and let's see what the top rated comments of the week are. And to start out, we have Critter9A, who says, I hope things advance for the gun community as a whole. The constant crime wave and lack of police support, we are on our own and left to the wolves. Now, I completely agree. My hopes are this is going to be a pro-gun year. But as I said, I'm not looking for your hopes. I'm looking for predictions. Then we have Harley Walker. It would be nice to have a pro-gun year, but I suspect it will be much the same. You win some, you lose some. I'm hoping for the asteroid reset personally. Well, I think a lot of people are. The world is just getting crazier and crazier, even outside of what we're talking about here in the Second Amendment. The world doesn't make any sense anymore. And maybe it is time for that reset. Who knows? I know there's a lot of people hoping for it just to get back to some sense of normalcy. Then we have Stevo545, who says, as a soon-to-be ex-Californian resident, I can say that all signs lead to advancement in our 2A. We are all expecting a text and tradition opinion when it comes to the standing of reviewing Second Amendment infringement cases rather than the two-step process the lower circuit courts in heavily regulated states are currently infringing on us all with. This will lead to so many new cases and rehearing of laws here, such as the handgun roster, the assault weapon ban, the ammo background checks, as well as the current mag case, which is headed to the Supreme Court as well, not to mention shall issue CCWs in California, Hawaii, New York, New Jersey, and all the other commie states. All of this, I believe, is no thanks to the GOP, but rather the Biden administration and the left progressives. The nation is getting a taste of what authoritarianism feels like, and it seems like most don't want a bar of it. So yes, I feel like a lot of people woke up and smelled gun oil and are embracing Second Amendment like never before. And that, I think, is the best analyzed comment of the entire week. He nailed it right on the head. It's no thanks to the GOP. Even if the Supreme Court rules in our favor, it should not have gotten to this point. The one thing I have said many times about our anti-gun colleagues, both at like the civilian level and the community level, all the way up to the national level, is that the people on the anti-gun side, they will fight. They never stop. They pull out all the strings. They will fight and try to be as sneaky as they possibly can to get their agenda through. But yet when it comes to our side, well, as long as there's no pressing issues, they don't do anything whatsoever. But if our side fought like the other side does, we wouldn't be in this situation. Then we have Zeus. We are about to see the end of a soap opera. It's a mystery unraveled. Yeah, sometimes the mystery can be really exciting. Well, we're all in this together, right? So hold on to your butts, as Samuel L. Jackson said in Jurassic Park. Then we have Knife Cursed, who said, more wins than losses. It's my prediction. And I can definitely see that. I think when it comes to the balance of the scales, we're probably going to win more this year than lose, but we will lose a few, especially in the communist states and in those very anti-gun circuits. And then finally we have Thaddeus Legion 78, who says it's going to be an unpredictable mess. And so maybe that's the something else vote I mentioned earlier. He's not even making a prediction because there's just too many variables at play. And unfortunately, I like to have a little bit of knowledge of what's coming to kind of predict it through probabilities and analysis. And sometimes you just can't because there's just too many variables, too many things that can change on a moment's notice. So there you go. That's the Texas Gun Vault poll question of the week, the first one for 2022. I hope you enjoyed it. If you would like to participate in next week's poll, please go to the community tab of my YouTube channel, and I will also put a link in the description below, and go over there, vote, comment, and like other people's comments so we can get the top rated comments of the week. So there you go, the Texas Gun Vault poll question of the week. I always enjoy making these, seeing what you guys have to say, and having all of our interactions. So let me know what you think in the comments section below. And as always, thanks for watching. If you're seeing this, thanks for making it to the end. I want to personally thank all of my Patreon supporters who make everything happen here at the Texas Gun Vault, because as you know, YouTube is constantly demonetizing Second Amendment channels like my own. And without their support, a lot of this wouldn't happen. If you like the content that you see here on my channel, feel free to go join me on Patreon. There's a link in the description below. You can get access to all the content that I create early and other exclusive content. If you don't want to support me, I urge you to find another Second Amendment content creator that you like and go and support them. You can also check me out on my new Rumble channel. Rumble is a free speech platform very similar to YouTube, and they don't censor Second Amendment content. You can also find links in the description below to other ways of following me, such as Instagram or my P.O. box, where you can send me things. I always appreciate your support. So as always, thanks for watching.